Well, I initially learned from Axeli, but it was a couple of years before it actually came up. It got up and running. So I didn't hear about it again until about a year ago, around the time there was the Stuttgart office where where it was rolling out and enrolling new people in Germany, because we had another event there around some book publications from N minus one. So then I connected with Exceli and with Jan Rietzma, who was working with him there, and learned a lot more about it. It was a very imaginative approach, very technically savvy and imaginative at the same time. And for a long time, I've been convinced that it's just too simple to say that we can step outside of or refuse capitalism, that we live in complicity with it, and that we have to find ways of turning that complicity to the benefit of other ways of living from within. So the parasitic model of Robin Hood project made a lot of sense to me. Oh, part of it is that I wanted to learn more about projects that were oriented toward a notion of the commons, toward self-organizing, toward ways of helping new emergent forms of political and social action coming. We're in Montreal, we're involved with projects like that on the more experimental end, experimenting on ways of coming together, creating new forms of collaboration and relation. We've known and had a sense for a long time that there are many, many, many like-minded groups all around the world, but sometimes it's a bit hard to really understand the, where to find them and learn about them. So for me, it was a way of really learning about the different approaches that people are starting to use, so we can also learn from them. And I just wanted to be part of supporting good projects. For me, it was important that because it's such a unique project, the Robin Hood collective to begin with, that it tried to find a way of maybe not of supporting projects that would not necessarily be on the radar of traditional funding sources because they're too creative, um, using approaches that aren't quite known yet. So I was concerned not to duplicate funding sources that already exist. And one of those criteria for me seemed to be using creative means. In other words, not just seeing a practical problem and trying to find a practical solution to it, because that, no matter how good um, the intentions, that can often end up in another kind of top down or coming in from the outside and telling people how they should be doing things. I mean, even if it's not the spirit in which it's offered, just because of the structure of how things work, it can come across that way. So a creative approach that addresses people from, as well as addressing really practical problems, addresses people's imaginations and hopes and dreams and ability to maybe step aside and think a bit differently, and have a creative or maybe even aesthetic or artistic edge, seemed to me an interesting way to go. And for me, the commons isn't just a set of resources. It's not a set of things. It's not a set of values. It's more where value comes from, and that's always from collaborative activity. So I was going through the projects, which I found really interesting, really amazing. It was a great experience just to get to know all these different projects. But I was looking for things that really addressed people from that angle, and instead of just serving an existing constituency, we're helping people band together to create new communities, new collectives. What I think of in terms of emergent collectivities. So the conference for me is a way of people drawing on their not just on their labor, but on their intellectual and creative energies to set the conditions for emergent collectivities. So those are some of the criteria that I was thinking of. The other thing that's important to me is that it could be something that could spread, that it was something that might create a model or an example that others could take up, tools that other people could take up, so that there's a kind of contribution toward a contagion of techniques for relation. Yeah. Uh, yeah, I think what Katerina was also saying about trying to assess the specific impact of a Robin Hood uh, contribution is important. There are a lot of very worthy projects, but maybe projects that are able also to find funding from more traditional sources, and maybe already have quite a variety of funding sources. So a relatively small contribution from Robinhood maybe wouldn't have the same impact as a different kind of project. So I think it's important for the committee to look at that and to think about not spreading the resources too thin, so that what the money really makes a difference. Yeah, and for me, it's really key that the notion of commons isn't that there's something that's already owned by everyone, and it's not based on commonality. It's actually that there's that everyone is able to enter it, but from their own angle. So for me, the commons is actually a concept of difference, of heterogeneity, even dissensus rather than consensus. But it's any kind of platform or milieu or event where people can come together from their differences without erasing their differences to create a kind of value that comes from acting together, create new forms of relation, not necessarily even knowing where they're moving in the first instance.